Hello, everybody. I'm Don Counts, and we're here at the Warrior Exhibit in Fayetteville, Tennessee. And I have Linda Williams with us, and you're going to tell us about who we have today.
Don, today we have Mr. Tommy Taylor. He served 2 tours in Vietnam, and obviously he was in the Navy. So we're really excited to hear from him today.
Tell us a bit about yourself, where you grew up, and what led you into the military.
Grew up in the Howell Hill area, went to Lincoln Grade School and Flintville High School. Got out of high school and got a draft papers from Uncle Sam, and I turned around. My dad was in World War II, my grandfather was in World War I, and I had them both sitting there talking to me, and they said, "Don't go join the Army." They knew what was going on in Vietnam. So at that point, I went to Huntsville, Alabama, and joined the United States Navy. That's how it came by joining the service. Never been out of the state of Tennessee except for the Huntsville. I had some grandparents in Arkansas, and we'd go down and visit them maybe once a year or something. And that was the only states I'd ever been to. I was a young and dumb kid. But when I left Huntsville, went to Orlando, Florida for boot camp for 13 weeks at that time. I think they've cut it back to 8 or 9 weeks now.
What year did you go in, Tom?
1971.
Okay.
And they've cut the boot camps back, and I don't really know why, but at that time it was 13 weeks, and we didn't get to see our parents, didn't get to make no phone calls at home. We did get mail. We could get mail in, but it was a growing up experience for a young man that, like I said, never been anywhere. Boot camp for 13 weeks, and at that point, they gave me an aptitude test, and while I was in boot camp, said, "Hey, you'd be a great electrician." Didn't know nothing about electricity. Nothing. I knew how to jump a car off or something like that, or a tractor, but didn't know anything about electricity. And they sent me from boot camp to ACE school, aviation electrician school in Jacksonville, Florida. Spent 4 months there. They taught us, it was crammed with stuff, transistors. We went through the whole 9 yards. Ohm's law. We figured it out. Graduated from the AE school, and I got orders to Albany, Georgia. Now then, I'm getting back into my part of the country. I'm back in the South, I would say. I came home for 2 weeks, and I don't remember exactly. It was around March. I don't remember exactly what dates, but it was around March, and I stayed home for 2 weeks, drove to Albany, Georgia, about a 6-hour drive. So I drove to Albany, and that's before GPS, road maps, stuff like that. Dad taught me how to use a map. He says, "Here's the route you're going to take to Albany." So I went to Albany and didn't have any issues at all, really. I memorized those road numbers and street names, and got to Albany. And when I checked in on Sunday afternoon, the guy when I check in, he says, "Don't unpack. We're going to Vietnam Wednesday morning." So that gives me 3 days, and I had to call my mother, make arrangements to get my car, and Mom took it pretty hard. We're on our way to Vietnam. Of course, when they say that, I just still didn't know what I was doing, but I was going on an aircraft carrier. So I'm on the middle of the ocean and stuff, sitting out there with a rifle in my hand. Spent 11 months on the USS Kitty Hawk. Flew from Albany to San Diego, California. Spent about a week out there loading up equipment, getting prepped, ready to go. We left there, and it took us about 3 weeks to go from San Diego to the coast of Vietnam. They called it Yankee Station. But in the meantime, let me back up. We did stop in Hawaii. They fueled and got some supplies and stuff in Hawaii, and then we were gone again. We had about at the first round of, let me back up, I'll tell you this first. What we did was we actually dropped bombs. The military, the Army would say, "Hey, we need this area blowed up, or we need this bridge blowed up." And we would actually fly off the ship, the Kitty Hawk, and drop 500-pound bombs on whatever the mission was. The plane I worked on was an RA-5C Vigilante. It did not have any weapons. What we did was we did recon. we took pictures of all the damage and stuff before. If they wanted to say, hey, we got a bridge over here, we'd fly over that son of a gun and we would take pictures. We had a camera on there, would take pictures from horizon to horizon. It was a pan camera. And then they would come back, and the film in it was about 8 inches. And they would take that thing and put it on a roll and manually roll it and look through a scope and look at the whatever the pictures was taken. When they found that target, they could put it on a map and exactly what coordinates was, and then send out the A6s, F4s, or whatever to drop bombs and stuff on it. And of course, we dropped bombs for the Army. You know, if they get in a bad situation, you know, they were getting overrun. We would physically go in there and drop weapons, bombs on top of them, and close to them too. I mean, it was extremely close. I know everybody's seen these war pictures and stuff. The Phantoms and stuff would come in there, and they could carry about 15 of those 500-pound bombs, and they would really wipe out some territory when they dropped all those bombs at one time. And it wouldn't be just one; they'd be maybe 10 or 15 of them bringing it. So they multiplying that 15 amount of bombs. They're just wearing that hillside or water out with bombs. I worked on the RA-5C Vigilante. It was the first fly-by-wire jet the Navy had, and it was a headache. Nobody knew how to work on it. We were trained to work on it, and it had flight control boxes. The F4s and everything had boxes, but most of their boxes were for navigation as far as radar and stuff like that. Ours actually had control boxes that would help us fly the airplane. The Phantoms and stuff had cables that would run their flaps, their stabilizers and everything. It was all cable operated. Ours was hydraulically controlled by an electrical signal from the input. So ours was the first fly-by-wire airplane the Navy had. And there was some problems with it sometimes. We had some books, electrical manuals that was 6 or 8 inches thick, and we'd have to figure out, hey, what's wrong with this thing? You know, most of our problems was simple. Fuel gauge didn't work, or this light didn't work, something, you know. Fuel gauge is really important because they want to know exactly how much fuel they got on that thing to get back to the ship. And we had a lot of fuel gauge problems. They had so many tank sensors in the wings, and wherever there's fuel stored in that plane, those sensors would vibrate and it would break a wire. And they may be 10 sensor signals or sensors in the wing, and we'd have to figure out which one was bad, which one had broke a wire to, because everything was in series, it seemed like. The flight deck, I work nights. When you're sitting there, you're trying to get off, I'm gonna say we might launch 30 planes at night, and everything is in red. You don't want any bright lights because it messes up your vision. So every light in that thing at night is red, and so you bump into bombs that have sitting back there on a pallet or something, or pads, and you knock the shin off of that thing, you know, going around the corner. You couldn't see it, you know. Stuff like, after you've done it for a while, you know there's a row of bombs here. So we know, stay away from that area there. But it was a different world at night. We worked 12-hour shifts. I worked from 7 o'clock in the evening to 7 o'clock in the morning. And after we have our launches, we'd have to go up with the airplane, with the pilots and stuff, make sure when they climb in that cockpit, we have to make sure that everything is ready to go. If they have a problem, they call us up there and say, hey, this is not right. And we have to try to fix it in 5 minutes or whatever till our launch time come up. And most time we could get it fixed.
What happened if you couldn't? I mean,
well, we just had to cancel that mission.
Okay.
We just had to cancel that flight. You know, we couldn't do it. But we check everything prior to. I had a turn card. I could crank those engines and everything up. I could, just like he's sitting there, I could check everything in that cockpit. Everything's got a wire to it. I could check. The engine people sitting there, we don't have any warnings from their engines or anything. we check all that stuff prior to them pilots getting in that airplane. And when we say it's ready, it's ready, you know. I'll tell you, an instance I did one night, and I thought I was going to go in the brig, but I was honest about it. We didn't have anything to do, and we were sitting in a poker game. We were sitting there playing cards. And my maintenance chief, he says, hey, I'm the only one at night that could physically crank the jets up that I worked on. We had 4 of them. And he called me up in my shop and said, hey, Tommy, I need you to go start 604 for check a hydraulic leak, or let the engine people check an engine. He said, I need you to crank this engine. And I didn't have to crank but one. I said, well, I'm in a card game, give me a few minutes. He said, no, get your butt up there right now. So I had to get my hard hats on, get everything lined up. Have to stop by, we have line crew people, they have to put screens on the intakes, keep from sucking up damage stuff off the flight deck. And it's also personnel. We have to that thing keeps people from getting sucked up down the engine when you crank them up. But anyway, my job was to crawl the intake. I have to crawl all the way, and it's about a 20-foot intake system back to the first stages of the engine. I didn't do that. And it's the only one I never did. I have to go through there and make sure there's nothing in the intake to go through that engine. I didn't. I took my flashlight, set it on the intake, and just did a chin up and looked down through there. And that flashlight lights up the whole intake. I didn't see anything. I said, that's good, we're good. That was a mistake. I should have climbed that intake. And I may have not seen it if I climbed it, because whatever was in there, and I'm going to tell you this story first. I told the line crew to put the screen on, I climb up in the cockpit, and they give me the instructions. I have to follow their lead, because they're getting pipes and tubes and everything else hooked to this thing, power cords, everything to crank this engine. And then finally the line crew guy says, crank it. With a light, he has a light with a red one on it. So he gives me this signal to fire it up. So I turn the master switch on just on that engine, cranked it up, give it a little fuel, throttle. They check it, everything's good. No leaks, nothing. The hydraulics people's happy. Now then, here comes the problem. I have to run at least 90% of throttle in that thing to suck cold air down that intake on that hot engine, and then pull it right back down and shut the masters off, kill it. That cold air cools that engine off. When I went to 80 or 90% with the throttle, the whole airplane shook. I mean, I'm sitting there and the whole plane shook. I saw fire. We got mirrors on the canopy right here, and I can see fire come out the back of that engine. That's sparks. I mean, it lit up the sky. So I'll go ahead and, it didn't kill it. I mean, it's still running, but it's limping. So I shut it off, cut the master switch off, and I climbed down and climbed the intake. At that point, I went down that intake. And the turbines, it has 17 stages of turbines, and you can't see all 17 stages, but you can see maybe 4 or 5 stages of that turbine system. So every turbine blade I could see down through there had a chip knocked out of it. And they're shiny steel. I mean, it's an extremely expensive engine because all that stuff's polished. I mean, it's balanced and everything. Well, I've just ruined a $500,000 motor. So I go down and I call my maintenance chief up that had me go up in the first place, and I called him up, and we had the old rotary phones, and I dialed his shop number, and I said, Chief, I said, I have FODed, which FOD means foreign object damage. I have FODed 604 or whichever plane it was. I don't remember exactly which one it was. He laughed and he hung the phone up. He thinks I'm joking him. So I'm back over there rotating dial on that phone. I said, Chief, I have FODed 604. He said, there ain't no way, and hung the phone up because we hadn't done it. We've never done one, you know. I dialed him back up. I said, Chief, you better get up there and you better get another airplane ready to go because this one's not going anywhere. I have fought in 604. So he goes up and I meet him up there and we get up there and he climbs the intake and he's older gentleman. Well, I say he's old. I'm 19-year-old and I'm thinking he's probably 30, you know, and I'm thinking this old guy, he's climbed the intake. And he climbs down there and he comes back and he says, Taylor, you better go get a haircut. I did have long hair, and we all had long hair. They didn't care what your hair, about your beards or nothing. As long as you did your job, they didn't care. But he told me, you better go get a haircut. So I went through the chain of command and got to, actually the XO. I didn't get to the CO, but I got to the XO, and I told them all the same story. I told them I did not climb that intake. I pulled up, didn't see anything in it. And I thought, well, I'm going to go to the brig because I've just destroyed $500,000, you know, and that's a lot of money. So I went back into the shop at 7 o'clock the next night after going through all these command captains, and all of them were officers. After I went through the chain of command, I go back to my shop that night and thinking, I'm going to jail. You know, they're going to lock me up. Well, the safety officer comes down there and he says, Taylor, let me have your turn card. We had a card that entitled me. It tells everybody that I'm entitled to turn them engines on that jet. So he takes my turn card. I said, okay, what else I gonna do? He said, that's it. We're not gonna do anything. And so they took my turn card, and that night they needed another engine turner. So I'm the only one on night shift that's qualified. Well, I didn't have a turn card, but I'm qualified to do it. And they come to me and say, hey, we need you to turn. I said, boys, I can't. I've lost my turn card. I'm done, you know. So they go and wake up a guy it's a mech that's working a day shift. They wake him up and make him turn that engine. So the next night I come in there and here comes the safety officer and he gives me my turn card back. I said, what's this? He said, we think you figured out you probably won't ever do that again. And I said, I guarantee you I won't ever do that again. I promise you that. So I ended up lost my turn card for 24 hours, basically, you know. So I'm back in. But you know, I was wrong. I did not do my job properly. I mean, I told them exactly. I said I didn't do my job, and it cost. When you don't do specifics, it can be deadly sometimes, you know.
In anything.
In anything.
Yes.
And that's something I learned that was a valuable lesson. It was a costly.
You've never forgotten it either.
No, I'll never forget it till the day I die. I mean, you know, but at least we knew that plane was not capable of flying. I mean, I didn't go send him out in a plane. It wouldn't make it back. And I have seen airplanes come back shot up that's barely limping, and they make it back. They're on one engine or whatever. You know, and they're smoking, their tailpipes are smoking, they've been shot up, but they limp back, and sometimes they can't. I have seen them hit the water, seen the pilots jump out, parachute out of them. Them injector seats, they call them 0-0 seats. You can be sitting still with no movement, no miles per hour, just sitting dead still, and they'll shoot you up far enough to open that parachute. So it's called a 0-0 seat. But I've seen them come out of them. I've seen people float over the side at night. You've got exhaust coming off them jets. When they taxi up, they have to give them a lot of throttle to get them moving. And you've got to be aware of jet blast. You've got to be aware of props. We had prop planes that we actually had a prop. And you can't see that prop at night, but you can hear that motor running. And you can hear them props. And you better stay away from them because they'll tear you all to pieces. I mean, they'll cut your head off, your arm off, whatever touches that thing, it's gone. But you learn that stuff. I mean, that's something that you know. That's why I work nights. They knew I was safe enough and capable enough to survive a night working nights. But like I said, it's nothing like the people that was on the ground. I have all the respect for them guys. They did some hard, no RD, you know, and all that, but Dale. I mean, there's people that lost their life over there that I know and was raised up with them. I've been in town running around with them, you know, and they got the call, and they went Army, Marines, and I was smart enough, I thought maybe, to join the Navy. And it's something I'll never forget, them 4 years. I've been all over the world, been to Africa. We had in 1973, we were in Vietnam, and Iran and Iraq was fighting real heavy in '73. Well, the government wanted to know, hey, what's going on? The plane I worked on with all them cameras on it, they took us over to Turkey, and we flew missions over Iran and Iraq, just watching them guys see what they were doing with them cameras and stuff. Come back, we stayed like 3 days over there, and we stopped, and our captain says, hey, we're going to stop somewhere and spend a night. Where you going to go? And they said, they wasn't but like 6 or 8 of us working that one plane. And they said, we have no clue. We didn't know. He said, let's stop in Africa. Okay. So we went to Mombasa, Kenya in Africa.
Wow.
Spent the night there, done a little bit of sightseeing, left there and went back to the ship on the aircraft carrier and finished up our Yankee Station tour, Been to Singapore, been to Hong Kong, been to Japan, been to Taiwan. I've been a lot of places. They always say if you want to see the world, join the Navy, and that's about the truth. You'll go places you'll never think about going. Cleanest place, the nicest city I've ever seen was Hong Kong. It was spotless. They would put you in jail for spitting on the sidewalk. That stuff is not. I mean, of course, it's China. Hong Kong is China. Yeah. But at that time when we were there, England was uncontrolled. They had signed an agreement for many years. The French had actually run that country, and then their lease ran out, and China's taken it back over in the last 30 years, 35 years. But it was clean. It was spotless. They really, really took care of Hong Kong. And you could buy seafood there for us. We eat shrimp cocktails for 50 cents, I think, stuff like that.
Not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore. But
so have you used what you learned in the service after you got out?
When I got out, I stayed in the car business. We'd always worked on cars and tractors and stuff growing up, and that electronics helped me though in the car business. Mm-hmm. I mean, I stayed in the car business for 42 years. And
now, where did you work?
I worked for the last 28 years. I worked for Jerry Dampson, Honda, Acura. I actually worked on the Acura product. But great people. I mean, they think the world of them. Good product to work on. Made a good living working on those vehicles and stuff. And I enjoyed it because I was always working with my hands. That's something I always do.
So do you recommend young people today to go in the service?
Yes. If you have no idea what you want to do in life, if you don't want to go to college, if you really don't know what you want to do, go join the military. Those people will make something out of you. First of all, it's going to make a man or a woman out of you. Right. You're going to go in as a child and you're going to come back an adult. You might as well say that. When you leave high school, you're still a child in my book. You don't know nothing about the world. But when you get through with those 2 to 4 years of military, and some people might want to stay 20 years. There's a lot of people who do retire from
and you can retire and then go do something else.
That's right. If I had stayed in, I'd have retired at 38 years old.
Now, how many years were you in?
I stayed in 4 years.
4 years.
I was ready to come home.
Now, did you and Vicki marry while you were in
No,
the service?
we didn't. I married a young girl from Franklin County, and she passed away with cancer many years ago. And Vicki and I remarried to Vicki after that time. Okay. But we've been married 25 years, a long time. But
you got a good one. But
yeah.
She did too.
Oh yeah. Sometimes she'll fuss on me, and
Really?
Really?
But we get along well. She's been gone for 10 days on a trip, and she told me when she come in last night, she said, "I sure did miss you." And she was honest about it. You know?
I bet you missed her too.
I did. But that was the first thing she said. After 2 days, I really missed you. I said, well, I missed you too. House cleaning, and we got.
There we go.
Oh yeah, but anyway, I would recommend anybody that has no idea what's going on in life and what they want to do. You've got to get on a path. Really, right after high school, you've got to try to figure out what you want to do in life. I mean, you've got to, maybe a year or two. Best thing to do is education. I'm going to tell you that right now. If you can get 4 years of education in you, and maybe more, some people want to go get a master's and then get a doctorate or something. That's fine. As long as you're getting educated, if you're an educated person, the money will be there. I mean, you'll make a good living. But if you come out here and you don't want to work, I just don't understand what you're going to do the rest of your life. If you're ever going to have anything in life, a home, a vehicle, marriage, I mean, if you want to have a family, you're going to have to work because you've got too many bills, too many responsibilities to have to sit there at home and not do nothing.
I was just sitting here thinking a while ago when you were telling about being 19 with the responsibility that you had for those planes. I mean, it just at 19.
Mm-hmm. And I'm friends with people on Facebook. Got one buddy of mine out in Texas. We used to try to see each other about every 4 or 5 years, and we've gotten old. We've kind of slowed down, traveling and stuff. But we're always on Facebook together. And them boys know if they've got an issue, a problem, I'll be there. I mean, they know that. We went through some pretty tough times in our life, and we became brothers. And they know that if they have a problem, I'm coming.
That's awesome.
That's very good.
Got one out in Washington State. Got one in Albany. Got one in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Oh gosh, I've got them everywhere, and we stay in contact through Facebook.
Now, were these guys that you were on the carrier
Mm-hmm.
with?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure was. And there's
how many people were on the carrier?
total. That ship had approximately 6,500 sailors. A lot of people.
That's a big ship.
Yeah. Well, it's 3 football fields long and a football field wide.
Now, what about life on the carrier? I mean, were your sleeping bunks, were they tight or?
Well, we had 3 rows. We had 3 racks on top, one on top of each other, and I was always on top because I was the tallest one. I could get up on the top bunk pretty easy. And our compartment, our squadron, just our particular squadron, we traveled together. There was about 200 of us. I mean, we were a small group. But that's why we were so close, because we knew everybody in there, black, white, Hispanic. And we had Mexicans, and we had lots and lots of Filipinos. You would be surprised. The Philippines, they joined the Navy just like Americans do. They are be in the United States Navy, and we had a lot of Filipinos there. But we were just like brothers. I mean, we give each other a haircut, and it might not look worth a darn, but it was a haircut, But
who gave you your haircut?
I had a Mexican friend of mine that he was a good barber. He would cut everybody's hair, But we were a close knit family, like I said, today we're still that way. Some of them don't have Facebook. And a lot of the 30-year-olds, I thought, they're in their late 80s, mid 80s, and stuff like that. And they don't do that kind of stuff. And I try to find people sometimes on Facebook, and I'll actually pull them up on the internet. And of course, you'll pull up 1,000 Tommy Taylors, or whatever, all over the country. And it's hard to identify who you want to deal with,
Especially if they don't put their picture on it.
Right. That's right. But I found a lot of them, and a lot of them's found me. You know, I've got one guy down Joe Trigg in Mississippi. He's right on the coast down Biloxi, and he was a good guy, and we kid each other a lot. He's a Ford man, I'm a GM man, so we rib each other a lot over that stuff. But I'm gonna tell you something. We've got a great group here in Lincoln County too. I mean, Bank of Lincoln County feeds all of us. We've got a little group of Vietnam veterans that meet once a month, and you do a great job for us. The bank does a lot for us, and we can't thank everybody enough. When we come home, we were advised not to wear our uniforms when we come back to the States, because the people at that time hated us because of just the Vietnam War going. And they advised us not to wear a uniform when we come out in the public. But it's changed a lot. Now we're getting those thanks
Yes.
that we really deserve.
Did you have any trouble when you came home?
I did not. I did not have any trouble.
And you didn't have any in Lincoln County?
No. You know, one instance, I was in Vietnam on Yankee Station, and Mother's Day come up, and I was trying to remember what year it was. And we went into Subic Bay, which was a naval station in the Philippines, and I went over to a florist, and I told him, I said, hey, I want you to wire my mother some flowers for Mother's Day. And they did that. Of course, that cost me $30. It was expensive back in them days for do something like that, because I mean, communications from one country to the next wasn't just overnight like we do things today. And Mother got those flowers on Mother's Day, and I can't remember who the florist was or not, but they took them out. She lived out in Malina at that time, and they delivered them to her, and she said, hey, these are from your son. And she said, well, there ain't no way, you know. Ain't no way they're my son. She wouldn't take them. She thought it was a mistake, you know. So no, she didn't want to take somebody else's flowers. And anyway, that woman finally told her, the mother told me this story, so that woman finally convinced her, hey, this is from Tommy Taylor, your son, you know. And she said she bawled like a baby.
I bet she did.
But she refused them. She said, I ain't taking nobody's flowers, you know. And you ain't mine. That woman finally convinced her that was for her. But it was tough on parents, you know, back in them days. And you've been through the situation. You know what it's like. You worry about your kids, and I do mine too. Now, we've got 6 children between me and Vicki, my wife, and we worry about them all the time, you know. And that's the same
being
way.
a parent.
Right, that's being a parent, and I know if you're sitting in a war zone over there, you know they're worried to death. But anyway, life goes on, and that's just that part of my life. I wouldn't take anything for it, but I wouldn't want to go back. You know, I've always said that, you know, hey, if we had a war today, I'd probably go back if they'd take me, you know, because I could figure out how to work on airplanes again. I could, you know, I might not. Everything's changed up where they're flying with joysticks now instead of a stick between the legs. They had a big stick here in the middle, but now everything's flying with a joystick on the side. But we could still do something. Change a flat tire or something.
We thank you for your service.
Yes, sir.
We sure do, and we thank you for this interview.
Yes, sir. Ma'am, and I'll tell you, I was kind of nervous. I really didn't know what to expect, but it was pretty interesting.
Thanks.
Well, tell your friends.
I will. I see it on there. I watch it all the time. Every week or every time y'all have one, I get to see it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank y'all.